Hey, what's up everyone? It's Joe from GadgetryTech, and today we're going to talk about Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 purely in the context of audio. There's a couple minor changes from the older Modern Warfare 2, but I do want to make sure that you understand what those changes are to give you the edge while also setting appropriate expectations on how this audio engine actually performs. Now, I also have custom EQ presets for a huge range of headsets, headphones, IEMs, you name it. I'll explain all that in the second half of this video, but trust me, you do not want to skip ahead, because the beginning part of this video is probably the most important thing to understand in order to hear footsteps as best as possible. As always, if you do like what you see, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd love to see it the next video. I'm really trying to grow the channel a lot, and your support means everything. So thank you so much. And with that being said, let's kick it off and talk about the game. So I'll be honest, while I do like some of the improved mechanics on Modern Warfare 3 compared to 2, this is easily the most disappointing Call of Duty launch in a long time. The press has beaten it up, rightly so, because this should have been a DLC to the Modern Warfare 2, and the way it's packaged and built with this headquarters app and all this crap that they're trying to pull, it's obvious it should have been. So if you're here, there's a really good chance that you spent $70 on the game like me and you're trying to get the most out of it. So let's talk about audio settings. Now, the first and most important preset you want to change is set your audio mix to the home theater audio preset for multiplayer. Now, I tested this a lot. Footsteps are just as loud at the same distance. There's no volume advantage with the headset preset, but the tighter dynamic range of the headphones preset means that ambient noise like cars, birds, water dripping, it's all louder, and this increases your noise floor a lot, which when you do that actually makes it more difficult to hear footsteps, because now there's other volumes that are just as loud competing with what you're actually trying to hear. One other change you can make in the game, and this is the most important thing to take away from this video, is there's a perk called the Bone Conduction Headset perk, which you unlock when I believe you're level 26. It makes a massive difference in your ability to hear footsteps in game, more than anything an EQ will ever give you, simply because the EQ customizes the frequencies you hear, but the bone conduction perk makes more stuff appear sooner. I can't fix with EQ audio cues or sounds that don't exist yet. So use the bone conduction perk. The audible noise of walking, and I tested this in custom games, okay? The audible noise of walking footstep sound is only 10 meters away from the enemy, or when the enemy is approaching you, you won't hear them until they're within 10 meters. When you factor in the tiny amount of latency on top of that, people can literally walk right up to you and you'll barely hear it. The running distance is closer to 20 meters, and it's affected by objects like ground material or walls. That all changes what you're hearing and how far or soon. Now, these ranges are not only short, but there is a considerable volume drop off even at very close distances, like 2 meters versus 8 meters. And when you add in the fact that this ADHD inducing game of constant noise and chaos is playing on top of the footstep sounds you're trying to hear, and all of that noise is happening at all times, good luck forming any kind of consistency with awareness, because there's a lot of chaos going on. Bringing me back to the bone conduction perk, which is so much more than what the game states, which the description says to reduce combat noise, which is a lie at best. Even in custom games, when there's no other sounds present, the bone conduction perk actually increases the audible range of all footstep cues by about 10 meters. The walking distance, as I mentioned before, is closer to 10 meters, but with the bone conduction perk, you can actually hear people 20 meters away just walking. When they are running, instead of 19 to 20 meters, now you can hear them 30 plus meters away, and if they're jumping, you can even hear them 40 plus meters away. So you can see why this perk is incredibly important. Now, naturally, Call of Duty has a covert sneakers perk, which is a new thing, and it's kind of like having a 24/7 dead silence. I think everyone's going to be using that, and you can unlock it by doing the daily challenges, which for some reason they put tons of unlocks and progressions behind. Super annoying, but I think everyone's going to be using that. So some of these settings and EQ stuff, it may be useless depending on how effective the covert sneakers are. But definitely look for that, because while you do want to hear your enemies coming, you also don't want to be heard if you're going after them. Now, what makes hearing your enemy even worse in this game is how inconsistent everything is. Sometimes you hear stuff, sometimes you don't. The game will say, oops, too bad, I forgot, or no, we have too many things going on. I'm not going to play that footstep sound you probably wanted to hear. there's a thing called ambient occlusion, and ambient occlusion is how audio cues are impacted by objects in the game. So if you're in a building, how much audio drop-off should you expect through a wall or two walls or a floor, trees, hills, things like that. So it turns out random objects are creating barriers to hearing footsteps as well. Not just walls, but like even a signpost outside, which was like literally a piece of wood on a stick. If that was between me and my other character, because I bought this game on multiple consoles and platforms so I can do this testing, I couldn't hear any footsteps. It's like this little stick was a soundproof barrier. So ambient occlusion will get patched and improved. It always does in Call of Duty through time. But that's another more of a strategy tip. Don't put yourself behind a certain object and expect that object to not interfere with what you're hearing. Occlusion exists, and it can negatively impact how fast or soon you can hear someone coming. Now, there's also a fun little bug where if you crouch, walk, or strafe perfectly in a straight line on certain stairs, you won't hear any noise. The enemy won't either. I tested this a lot in game. Check this out. It's hilarious that you can be going up and down stairs right next to someone and not make a single sound. So if you're camping at the top of a step, don't always expect to hear someone coming. That will likely get fixed too, but at the time of this video, I thought that was a hilarious bug. I don't know what they were thinking, but here we are. So now that we know what settings to use in the game, we also have to set some realistic expectations. The best we can do is clean up the audio a bit so footsteps don't have to compete with other sounds as much. Obviously, with the way the game engine works, I can't make sounds appear out of nowhere. And if you have your own preferences on listening or different audio cues are affecting your game, this isn't the solution that's going to fix everything. But the way I tune this, now I played on so many headsets, all the ones behind me and more I used in this game over the past few days because I wanted to make sure that, one, I could provide usable presets for every model that you may have, while also delivering something that works for a lot of people in a lot of games. So the most important thing you can do when you customize EQ for footsteps is adjusting the bass performance. So even if you don't care for any of the other changes, or you're really happy with the way your headset sounds and you want it to be a little bit better, you usually want to address the bass region. So deep bass helps with immersion and explosions, but if there's too much of that, your drivers in your headset, IM, whatever, it's competing. There's noise trying to compete with the footstep sound. And if there's too much deep bass and explosions and things like that, those footsteps just don't stand out as clearly. So in the simplest sense, what you want to do is reduce your bass below 80 hertz as much as you can, as long as you're okay with losing some of the immersion. Keep the 110 to 125 hertz region stronger, and then help reduce the 250 hertz region, which is like your upper bass. That cleans up the bass a lot and has the most noticeable impact on footstep awareness. So when it comes to EQ, there are so many options out there. I have a lot covered in this video, but if you play on PC, I strongly recommend using SteelSeries Sonar. It's part of SteelSeries GG. I will have a link in the description below, or use Equalizer APO with the Peace extension. Sonar may have more features than you need, and it takes up more space, but it's incredibly easy to use and full of game presets from SteelSeries that works with any audio device. You don't have to buy a SteelSeries product. So whatever you have connected will work. Now, Equalizer APO with Peace is incredibly light on system resources. It's also free. There's some great, amazing features on that, but it's less graphically intuitive than Sonar. So it's really just a matter of preference. We're going to start with Sonar, though, because I want to show you why I recommend this so much. So if you're a PC player, we'll focus on Sonar first, and I'll also show you how to change it, because that, to me, is really what separates it from basically everything else. And then after that, we'll talk about Dolby Atmos and what platforms you can use all these on. Then we'll get into DACs and headset-specific settings. All right, so I'm going to have links in the description, as I said, for all the EQs that are applicable. Now, with Sonar, this is my Modern Warfare 3 Sonar tune, and I did things a little bit differently than my Modern Warfare 2 one. However, that one still works pretty well for Call of Duty. So you can always try both and see if you just happen to prefer one over the other. Again, this is a result of testing on dozens and dozens of audio products to get to this curve. And the reason why it's built this way is because we can leverage the sliders underneath to make the most out of this tune. So this shouldn't be a surprise. I took away sub bass, but not all of it, because I don't feel like the game should be neutered so much that you lose all immersion purely in terms of footsteps. And I also don't want to boost the upper frequency so much that it's painful and ear wincing, if you will, causing you to turn it down, or frankly, just find the sound profile offensive. So with Sonar, and again, now Sonar, by the way, if you see this share icon, you can import other people's presets. So install Sonar first. I'll have a link in the description. Then below that, I have a link for this EQ. You don't have to type any of this in anymore. You can click it, and it'll automatically import my tune into your Sonar, and you're good to go. So for those of you who are trying to replicate this in Equalizer APO or any other parametric EQ program, I'm going to go over this, but I also have the settings pasted in the description below to help save you time. So the low shelving, -5 decibels at 45 hertz. That cuts away a lot of the deeper bass, but not all of it. I lifted the bass boost a little bit higher than normal. It used to be like 115 hertz, but I noticed between 110 and 160 hertz, the footsteps just sound a little bit higher pitched, not like a lot. We're talking literally a very tiny window, but everything just seemed a little bit thinner sounding on the new Call of Duty for me. I don't know if it's just my own, listening has changed or whatever, but this worked best for me. So 130 hertz, 4 decibel lift with a Q of 1.6, which is how narrow we address it. This is optional. Now, a lot of gaming headsets have strong upper bass, like stuff from Sony, stuff from Razer. These brands boost the upper bass, which can create a little bit of muddiness to the sound, and I wanted to take some of that away. The other byproduct of this is when you boost this much bass in the 130 hertz region, you are going to be lifting that upper mid bass a little bit as well as a byproduct of that. So I wanted to clean this up. This is 250 hertz, minus 2.7 dB with a Q of 2. I'm going to get into why I did it this way in a moment. Now, these notches that I created are specific to ear fatigue sounds in the game. Clicking sounds, air noises. It's just, after a lot of testing, I found that if I created these two notches, it helped, one, make the footsteps stand out more, and two, and it got rid of some weirdness that I didn't like with this constant like clicking sounds. So an example, like this 5.75 kilohertz one, or 5750 if you're typing it into Sonar, minus 4 dB with a Q of 8. This is the sound of the countdown in Search and Destroy. So if you're concerned with that like stopwatch clicking sound, or when the game is about to expire, this sound reduces that clicking sound. And I focused very narrowly because I didn't want to take away other details from the game. So that helps. It's still audible, but now it's not as loud. I also found that the way this audio is mixed, that boosting to, this sounds really specific, but I promise you after a lot of testing, this was like targeting it as close as I could. 2,140 hertz or 2.14 kilohertz, 2 decibel lift at 0.707 Q, which is a nice wide, broad lift in that region. I'll cover these two dots in a moment because they're optional to use. So then you go into the 4 kilohertz region, which this actually made a more of an impactful difference on footstep sounds than Modern Warfare 2 did for me. So 3.2 decibel lift, 4.07 kilohertz, or again, if you're typing this in, you would type 4070 with a Q of 3.5. This upper frequency adjustment, you notice it's a high shelf. You can change these in Sonar. So if you're making this yourself, click on high shelving. At 10 kilohertz and up, 1.5 decibel lift with a Q of 0.707. So in Sonar, you have the ability to broadly lift and reduce each general area of this tune. The reason why I say this is this tune is designed to work with everything you own on PC, for Call of Duty specifically, by not drastically altering the sound profile of the device you own. It's simply cleaning up the bass and getting rid of a couple nuances in the upper frequencies while also subtly lifting kind of like the detail area of the footsteps and cues that you'd want to hear. Now, if you have a headset that has way too much bass, you can grab this slider down here and just reduce it. And if you look, I'm preserving a lot of my curve, the curve that you want. I'm just increasing or reducing it. So this is where you can fine tune the sound profile to your liking. If you find the bass too much, lower it. If you find the bass too weak, boost it. The same happens with the mid-range. If the mids seem like they're completely lacking, you can boost that whole area. And look what that's doing to the mids and upper mid-range as far as frequency response goes. So again, start with this bass tune and then use the sliders to see if you can kind of fine tune it the way you want. The treble, if I pull this, it's going to lift the treble. Now, the way this is working with the high shelf, I'm not lifting it as much. It really kind of just focuses on the lower frequencies. Be careful with the treble change because a lot of gaming headsets are really strong in the 8,000 hertz region. That's why my upper frequency, which is like your soundstage adjustment, starts above 10. I didn't want to lift the 8 kilohertz too much. So if it sounds really sharp and like sparkly on your headset and it's kind of painful, just pull this down or reduce this high shelf a bit to 0 or even negative. So the other two dots I want to tell you about, these guys right here, you notice the Q is set to 7. That's very narrow. These are your search and destroy arm disarm beeps. I analyzed the crap out of this game. I promise you I spent so much time, way more time analyzing than I should have compared to playing. But these two sounds make the beep for arming and disarming much louder. So I have a second preset specifically for search and destroy, but if you just import this one, all you have to do is, boost the frequencies however you want. You could do 7. I think I usually did 5 decibels, and I changed the wrong one. Let's fix that because I obviously modified the wrong one here. So let's go back, and I'm going to bring this right back down to where I was before. I think it was 2.2. I'll reset it, but on the other one here, let's go to 5 decibels so you can see the difference. Yeah, I was doing 5 decibels before, but doing this, it still kind of preserves the other stuff that we were targeting in the game, but now the beeps stand out even more. So just use the preset for that, and this will get you going on Windows if you're able to leverage Sonar. The other stuff at the bottom, I have everything turned off. You can mess with spatial audio as well on Sonar because using Sonar prevents you from using Dolby Atmos. So if you need to use Dolby Atmos, I'll show you that EQ in a moment, but just keep that in mind. With Equalizer APO, which is coming up next, that allows you to use Atmos. So if you want this exact curve with the ability to use Atmos, just use Equalizer APO. Now, a couple quick housekeeping things first, just to help hopefully simplify this as much as possible for you. On PC, I already recommended to use Sonar. If you don't want to use Sonar, use Equalizer APO. If you're using Atmos and PC, you're not overlapping and doing all of these together. It's one or the other. And obviously, none of these are perfect for everybody. We all have our different preferences. And you may have an audio product that frankly doesn't work with this tune and you want to customize it. And that's okay. So if you're playing on Xbox, I highly recommend using Dolby Atmos to do custom EQ. Not only does Dolby Atmos help with spatial cues, but it has a pretty decent 10-band equalizer, and that'll apply with any device that you pair to it. If you are connecting something like the Astro Mix Amp, either whether it be the A40 version or if you buy the A50 and you have the DAC built into that for Xbox, I have Astro-specific EQ presets later in the video tuned for those. Now, if you're using the Astro A40 style mix amp on Xbox, but you're using an EPOS headset or Drop or VZR, Beyerdynamic, whatever is plugged into it, do not use the EQ preset for the A40 or A50. Just because it's for the mix amp, for example, doesn't mean it applies for other headsets and headphones. You want to use set it to flat or a signature sound, whatever you want that's pretty much flat on Astro, and then use the Dolby Atmos tune. Now on PlayStation, this gets a little bit more difficult. I usually don't recommend using an Astro mix amp on PlayStation because little guys like the Creative G6 exists, and that's a significantly better DAC option. It has a 10-band equalizer built in. So I will have pictures of 10-band equalizer presets, which is universal to any DAC or software that uses a 10-band equalizer. That includes Razer, JBL's Quantum series, things like that. So there will be specific EQ presets for certain popular models. If I left yours out, it's only because the Sonar preset or the Atmos preset is better than using its own software. The other thing to consider is things like the Corsair HS80, which I also tested extensively, has no onboard EQ. And Corsair's IQ software has a pretty bad equalizer implementation for all Corsair products compared to Dolby Atmos. So you might as well use the Dolby Atmos tune, which sounds significantly better on PC and on Xbox if you somehow got a Corsair headset to work. So hopefully that didn't make things too confusing. Again, we'll start with the universal stuff first. Use those where you can. And if there's a specific tune to your model later, maybe switch to that. All right, so that wraps up the video. Hopefully you like the idea of this sound signature not being too aggressive on the treble or sucking too much bass out and losing the immersion. Audio isn't everything. Make sure your in-game settings are set appropriately as well so you can hear footsteps as soon as possible, but also use sound tactics and don't expect the game to be 100% reliable with audio cues. An EQ preset can't make sounds appear that weren't there in the first place. We just kind of fine-tune the stuff that comes in. So if you found it helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd love to see you at the next video. I'm really trying to grow the channel a lot into the holidays. I'm looking forward to 2024, and I hope you all have a good one. I'll see you next time.